And I know you
Mhm.
as the developer of Drauger?
Drauger OS.
Drauger. Okay, Drauger.
Yes. Um,
Is that after an Elder?
s-
Is that an Elder Scrolls reference or no?
yes,
Is it? Awesome.
it is.
That's cool.
Um, so I chose that name specifically because Skyrim is my favorite video game of all time,
Excellent.
and I wanted to pay homage to it. And the spelling specifically is because the first few times I was writing it, I
Hmm.
have terrible spelling. So I wrote it how I thought it was supposed to be spelled. And by the time I realized I was misspelling it, it was too late.
Oh
And I just
man.
ran with
Oh no.
it.
Oh man. So it was already out there, right? And there was no
it
undoing.
yep. So
Um. Okay, but you go by. What is your real world name?
my name's Thomas.
Nice to officially meet you because I know we've talked sporadically online, but and I think I've been wanting to talk to you on the show for a year or
Hmm.
something, and this year, this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Enough said. 2020. Enough said. I'm wondering if you would like to tell us your origin story. I love hearing people's Linux origin stories. Like where did you start this adventure?
I was in eighth grade, so about 6 years ago ish. Um, I got a message from my teacher at school that I had been selected to receive a free computer from this collaboration between Google and a nonprofit called Cramden Institute.
Hmm.
And Cramden, what they do is they take old computers that have been donated to them, refurbish them, and then install Linux on it. And I was given this computer, taught how to use it at a very basic level by some Google employees, and it had Linux on it. The distro it was running at the time was something called Ubermix. 20,
Ubermix.
yeah, Ubermix. Super
Wow.
weird. It's an Ubuntu-based distro that's designed for students,
Okay.
and Ubuntu, it was based on Ubuntu 12.04.
Gotcha.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, so precise, I believe it was. Um, and it had this really weird desktop environment. Think almost like something you would use on a phone or a tablet. It wasn't using Unity
So
or
like like
GNOME.
like gnome. Sorry. No, I mean I
Eh,
guess I picture gnome as kind of a tablet like or
yeah,
phone like interface, but
right.
um
But it wasn't. I
hmm.
actually discovered that I could have their desktop environment and Unity running simultaneously.
Oh,
So
interesting.
I would have like this whole full screen thing that was super designed for touchscreens and Unity over top of it. I tried contacting them at one point to try to get the source code, but they never responded.
Oh,
Um,
bummer.
so I don't know, but I I kind of liked it. And that was my first foray into Linux. I had no idea what I was doing. I was the stupid kid who thought that doing sudo app update straight up updates your entire system. I didn't know you had to do sudo app upgrade as well. So I was sitting there with a super out of date system.
I won't tell you how long it took me to learn basic command line stuff.
Oh yeah,
So, yeah.
right. What really got me into Linux from that point was so the hard drive in it started failing. And this was a
Okay.
really old 80 gig hard drive, so it was on its last legs when I got it anyway. So I went out and bought like a 1 terabyte hard drive. That way I knew I had enough space. But that was the time that I had to learn all your basic Linux user stuff. So how to make a bootable SSD, how to install an operating system, what an ISO is, stuff like that. Um,
And it was
and
kind of a necessity for upgrading and
right,
repairing your system, right?
right.
Yeah.
And um, me and my stupid little world thought I was actually running raw Ubuntu. So I switched to raw Ubuntu, and that started my distro hopping days.
Ah, yes.
Because the system had a gigabyte of RAM, and let me tell you,
Oh my
Unity
god.
needs more than a gig of RAM.
Wow.
Hopped around trying to find something that would suit what I liked because I had learned at that point to love Unity,
Hmm.
but also wouldn't make it to where I could only have 4 Firefox tabs at a time. So I tried most of the flavors of Ubuntu and I think 1 or 2 others, but I kept coming back to Ubuntu proper because of Unity. And around that time, I started getting into programming because I didn't know sudo apt auto remove yet. And I thought I had to manually go into my boot partition and delete kernels. So you can imagine, imagine me nuking my system several times using that.
Isn't that how we learn, though? I mean,
Yeah.
I know that it can be a little bit traumatic while it's happening, but we always, at least I always tend to look back on those failures and go, I really learned quite a bit from really messing that up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always tell people I'm trying to get into Linux that you will mess up your system at least once. Don't run sudo rm-rf/. Do not.
The
But
difference, kids, is that you'll mess it up instead of having somebody like Microsoft mess it up for you. See,
that's the key.
Ownership.
Yes, it's your own fault. It's not Microsoft's fault. You have no one else to blame but yourself for once. I ended up learning how to do things after getting into programming in order to try to fix an issue I didn't have. And from there, it just kind of took off, and I had crazy ideas like Drauger OS.
Okay, so talk to us about Drauger OS.
So Drauger OS was initially a distro meant for emulation. The idea of it was I wanted a game console that I could chuck a Xbox 360, original Xbox, PS3, Wii, GameCube, any type of disc that I had physically. I wanted to be able to chuck it into the disk drive and the system immediately detect what game console it was for and start up the appropriate emulator. That was my dream.
Is that a thing now? I mean, can you actually do that with something like RetroPie or?
As far as I'm aware, that level of detection is not yet available.
Yeah, because every emulator I've ever played with, it's always like, okay, launch the emulator, launch the platform that you want, and then you'll have your selection of games, not vice versa.
Right.
That would be slick, man.
And on top of that, most emulators require you to play the game from a file on your hard drive. You can't play it off the disk.
Okay.
And I was wanting to play it off the disk because even though I knew that would be slower, I knew that for starters that wouldn't violate DRM, so that's a thing. But also, I'm not inclined to play a game I don't have because I haven't heard about it probably, and I don't know if I want to play it or not. But the games I have, I know I enjoy, so I definitely want to play them.
Yeah.
So that was the idea initially. And early versions of Drauger OS were working towards that. They had a lot of emulators packed into them, had a massive ISO because of it, but it was
how big?
in that direction.
Do you remember how big?
Just under 4 gigs.
I don't even know if I'd call that massive. I mean, I guess by massive compared to Ubuntu or any modern distro, but I think that Zorin Ultimate is 4.2 gigs, maybe.
That all ended when Nintendo started going on their tirade for pirated game emulator distribution stuff.
Okay.
And this is the part that I'm open about, but I'm not too proud about it. Drauger OS shipped with the BIOS files for PlayStation 2, I think. Yeah, and I know
that's the big no-no, isn't it? Same with the Dreamcast BIOS. I think those are legally not supposed to be shipped outside of the Dreamcast console, right?
But the reason I did that was because if you have those BIOS files, then the emulator can use them, and you get better performance.
Okay.
So that was like the entire idea. Save the user several steps and setup. Just ship the BIOS files with it and call it a day. But when Nintendo started doing that, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I don't know what they're going to do with emulators. I don't know if they're going to start tracking down small-time people like me who are shipping BIOS files. So I just completely
Hmm.
switched gears to gaming in general, ripped all the emulators out, ripped out those BIOS files, and here we are today. Generic Linux gaming, make it as
Yeah.
simple and easy as possible, but give you also the maximum performance possible and as much disk space as possible. So when you install Drauger OS, there's very
Hmm.
little on the system. It is supposed to be super lightweight, but also at the same time enable you immediately to do what you want to do. So it comes with Lutris Game Hub, which I learned about thanks
Nice.
to you.
Nice. That's awesome. Really? So you learned
Yeah.
about it. You learned about it from Linux for Everyone, and then included
Mhm.
it in Drauger. Oh man, that's so cool.
Yep.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So there you go. That's
Huh.
Drauger OS. It's still a work
Uh,
in progress, as it always is, but it's getting there.
XFCE desktop.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And is it just you? Are you? Is it a
Um,
one man plus a community of contributors or?
it's two of us.
Okay.
So that we split the development. I do desktop, and the other dude, Logan,
Hmm.
he does the website.
Oh, okay.
The most you see me do on the website is the text, occasionally a blog post. I'll contact him if I wanted to add something to the menu. That's about it. I manage the app repository and I do the development on the OS itself. I'm trying to get more contributors because this takes up most of my free time. All in all, I do most of the work. We've had people come in occasionally. They don't help out for too long, but hey, any help's better than none.
I don't like making things into a which distro is better, so that's not my intent here. But
Okay.
I wanted to ask you what some of the key differences are between Drauger and Salient OS, just because I have experience with Salient OS, which is also a gaming focused distro, which also uses XFCE. So I was just curious about some of the differences that people might want to be aware of.
Right. So the main differences is first off our bases. Salient OS is based off of Arch. Drauger OS is based off of Ubuntu.
Aha, big
Um,
difference. Okay.
yes, very
Hmm.
big difference. Um, Beyond that, the biggest differences you're going to see is, and I've actually talked to the dude behind Salient OS before, Silent Robot.
Yeah,
Um,
he's awesome.
Salient OS, yeah, he is a really cool guy. Salient OS isn't just geared towards gamers; it's also geared towards content creators
Ah,
and
true, true, true.
streamers.
Yeah,
Right. Drauger OS is geared explicitly and solely towards gamers. If you want to stream, fantastic,
right.
but it's not set up for that out of the box.
So you're not going to
Um,
have like OBS and Blender and
yeah, you're not going to
video
have those out of the
editors
box.
and yeah, okay.
Right.
Gotcha.
Um, Salient OS is also a little bit less minimalistic than Drauger OS is. Like you install Drauger OS, you have the bare necessities. You have a terminal, a file manager, and a text editor. I think I have gedit shipping with it. Another big difference is the system installation utility. So Salient OS uses Calamares. We
Hmm.
actually have our own in-house system installation utility, and there's a story behind that too.
Wow. Isn't that a
Yeah,
lot of, isn't that a ton of work?
it is, and I didn't want to do it,
I
but I
mean,
did.
because couldn't you have just like slapped Ubiquity onto there and just called it a day? No.
No,
Oh,
no.
okay. Well, I guess it's
So
story time then.
I'm trying to think. 9, 10 months ago, I think it was. I was trying to completely change how I do development because I was doing it wrong up until then. I was
Hmm.
had my development version of Drauger OS in a virtual machine, and then I was
Okay.
packaging
Okay.
that down using System Back.
Hmm.
And that's fine and all, but System Back is no longer supported, and I was having issues supporting UEFI, and booting up looked absolutely terrible, and I had humongous ISO, and I had no granularity. It was a mess.
Man.
Um, so I was changing the entire way I was doing my development, and I knew in doing that I couldn't use System Back anymore, and that was okay. That was intentional.
Hmm.
So I needed to use something else. I tried Ubiquity first because that's the de facto what you use if you're Ubuntu based. Ubiquity would partition the drives and nothing else. So I tried Calamares
Hmm.
because I knew Calamares was modular to an extent. It was fast. It was easy to use. but it would partition the drive and get 10% of the files on there, but then it would freeze. And I actually talked to the Calamaris devs about this, and we could not figure out for the life of us what was going on at the time. All we could figure out was it was something to do with SE Linux issues, and it was running into some sort of issue because we weren't using SE Linux, and it was expecting us to, and none of those properties were set, and there was some deep-seated bug having to do with all that deep in the code of Calamaris.
Wow.
So while I was seeing if they could fix that bug, I started a sort of proof of concept. And that's what became System Installer today. At the time, the back end was entirely Bash and the front end was entirely Python. But the goal of it wasn't so much something that was actually really usable. It was more of a, can I make a system installation utility that can install a system somewhat reliably in a decent amount of time? And it worked eventually.
Eventually.
Yes. Keyword eventually. It has been, the entire backend, for the most part, has been rewritten to Python. It's got a multi-threaded backend. It's capable of installing any Debian-based distro in about 2 to 3 minutes-ish, assuming you have a quad-core CPU, an SSD, and a decent network connection, and about 4 gigs of RAM. And
this is my impressed face. My impressed face.
When it got to that point, the fastest system installer that I knew of was MX Linux's system installer. And they were installing a system in 7 minutes. So for a little window of time, we were the fastest on the market.
Okay. How, in your honest opinion, how easy is it to get Drauger installed? Like, is this a noob friendly thing or no? That's okay if it's not.
Right now, I'd say it's more intermediate friendly. It's not nearly as simple or easy as Ubiquity is. I'll be honest about that. The manual partitioner, you literally get a window and it opens up gparted, and you have to partition it in gparted, and then tell it what partitions to use where. And that was just what I had to do in order to make a manual partitioner, because I don't know how to make that in a GUI yet. I do have plans to fix that in the future, but for right now, gparted works great. Drauger OS, we are trying. I'm not going to make any promises about this, but we are trying to make a game console that will ship running Drauger OS out of the box.
Dude,